Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the third public meeting of the Quinn support group. Started off in Cullyhanna with around 200 people there. Went across Berlin with probably 400 people. I think looking around here we must have something similar here tonight. And I hope we can have a night where points of view can be put without any shouting or acrimony, because there's no need for that. If we have a point of view to make, we can make it in a straightforward, honest fashion. But I start off by introducing you to the top table here. All members of the committee of the Cullyhanna group. On the far side there's a Mackin, Seamus Bayou, who chaired the last meeting in Cross, Dave Quinn, Barbara Rooney, Geraldine Donnelly, councillor, Paul's mother Breach Quinn, Stephen, Shauna Quinn, Jerry McMahon, James Quinn, Paul's brother, and Peter Quinn. And as our previous two meetings, before we began any business, we asked you to stand for a minute's silence in memory of Paul and to give us time just to reflect on the tragic life cut so short. So please stand up for 1 minute silence. Thank you very much. It's great to see such a full room, and good big comfortable room it is. Most of us who are here have been in the Glentown many times before, usually for a happy occasion, something like a wedding, or in for an evening out or a night out or a cup of coffee with a friend and a chat about something. But sadly tonight this is a more sombre meeting, and we're here for a more sombre and sad reason. We're here because of the murder of young Paul Quinn, just turned 21, back in October, a few miles out the road in Tullycura. And also we don't forget that 3 other young men were battered and traumatised that day too. And that's something that will live with them for the rest of their lives. And we have a kind of a running all of we established at our previous meeting, certain, if you like, committee business we go through, and then we will give public reps, councillors, TDs, a chance to say a few words, and then we throw it over to the floor. So are there any public reps who wish to speak? If you just put up your hand to give us an indication of numbers who are here. I know Queen on TD is here, and Margaret Connell on TD is here, so any more just please indicate. Okay, so that's fine, the numbers are there, we'll be able to give you all time to say a few words then. So basically the Quinn support group was formed to support the Quinn family in their quest for justice. And it's important to remember that while Paul was being beaten and battered, a gentleman was whispering in the ears of at least one of the other victims, "Now you know who the bosses are around here. Now you know who the bosses are." So that was a message not just for those young men, it was a message for the community, that somebody wants to boss our community. And I don't think we want to allow anybody to boss our community. We had people for 40 years trying to boss us with helicopters and outposts and everything else. We don't want any bosses, no matter who they are. But before we go any further, I want to call on Stephen first to say a few words to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of myself, Bridge, James and Kathy, I want to thank you all for coming here tonight to this meeting. Seeing people like yourselves coming out to support us is one of the few things that does us good since Paul was murdered. Some people are still trying to say that our family is being manipulated by others, and I want to tell you that that is not true. We are not stupid. They say Jim McAllister or the SDLP are manipulating us. They would prefer to stay at home. They would prefer us to stay at home and keep quiet, but we won't do that. When Paul was murdered, we asked for help, and people like Geraldine Donnelly and Jim McAllister came to help us. We asked them to talk for us, and they did so. They spoke for us when we could not. It is the ones that is making the accusations who are trying to manipulate, not the people who have helped us. When the Quinn support group was set up in our house, we were pleased, and we asked for the help from our fathers. Those who didn't help should not be attacking those who have helped, that have helped us. We want justice for Paul and the people of our area. We are not anti-anybody or anti-any party. We are anti-murder and anti-murderers. We want the truth about the murder and the murderers. We want the killers arrested and the organisers too. You coming here tonight is helping us, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Dr. Rory Johan is also in attendance, just be told. And what Stephen said there is very important, because the Quinn support group wasn't formed for actually a good 3 weeks after the murder. And it wouldn't have been formed at all had things taken their natural course, if certain allegations and everything else weren't made, compounding the hurt of the Quinn family. That's what led to the formation of the group. And the group was formed at an open meeting in Stephen and Bridges' house. But it would have been the best part of 50 people there. People of all politics and no politics. And we formed a small working committee out of that, of which I was appointed as chairman of, or elected as chairman of. And I think that the person who voted me for chair would have totally different politics than I would have, but that was of no relevance, of no matter. When we go in that door, into that committee, we leave our politics outside. We are interested only and simply in getting justice for the Quinn family over the brutal murder of Paul. And it's important to bear in mind how brutal that murder was. I mean, any murder is brutal. But this was a young man beaten from the tips of his toes to the top of his head. It's hard for anybody to think about it. So how hard is it for the poor mother or father or brother and sister to think about the way that young man was treated? When we formed our group, we drew up a statement of aims. I should have a copy of it here somewhere, just to give you the outline of. And now you can see the amateurness coming through. I had it a moment ago, like many things in this life. But we can come back to that later on. It's just the basic facts of why we were formed and what we want to do. And we can come back to it. Also, this may be as good a time as any just to point out that when you're leaving here tonight, the Gardaí will be handing out 2 leaflets. One which is a plea for help. The Gardaí have had lots of cooperation in Monaghan and in Armagh, but they still need more. And they're asking, in fact, I'll read the piece out just. And Garda Síochána are continuing their investigation into the murder of Paul Quinn in Tullycura, Castleblayney, County Monaghan, on the evening of Saturday, 20th of October 2007. We are determined to rigorously and thoroughly pursue every line of inquiry, with a view to bringing those who are responsible for this murder before the courts and achieving justice for Paul Quinn, his family and the community. Our priority is to investigate a crime which has occurred in the community, and in order to do that successfully, we need the help of the community. Gardaí at Castleblayney are working on this case on a daily basis and are appealing to the community to contact them with any information about what happened to Paul Quinn on the night he was murdered. We would also appeal to the people who were in the shed at Tullycura that evening to think about what took place there, what they saw or heard, and to reflect on the events that led to the loss of Paul Quinn's life. The Gardaí are working in close cooperation with the Police Service of Northern Ireland. We ask anyone with information to contact either the Gardaí or the Police Service on the following numbers. The numbers will be on the leaflet. The second one then is more particular. It's actually calling for information about a particular van, described as white Toyota Hiace or Nissan Vinette, old type van, with bull bars and sliding doors to the side, similar to the one that's in the picture, which again you'll see on the leaflet. And it had an Northern Ireland white front registration plate. So you will get them as you leave the meeting tonight. It's important also to point out that we here as a group, we're not asking anybody to accept our complete analysis of what happened. But we are asking you to at very least keep an open mind and not to rule anybody out of who was responsible for the murder. That happened in some cases immediately. People could say who didn't do it, although they can never actually tell us who did do it. We're asking you to accept that there is an organisation of some type in South Armagh, this border region, which has the ability and the capability to kill people, and has done in this case, and killed the man, as we said, in a much horrific fashion. Now, the committee and the family believe we're talking about the provisional IRA, who would claim to be working on behalf of the people of the area. Now, this is something that's going to have to be dealt with, not only in this case, but on the issue of rights for the people of South Armagh, especially the young people. Breach Quinn here herself said on one interview on television, she actually put the freedom of the young people of South Armagh first. She said the first thing she wanted to see was that the young men and young women of South Armagh could go where they liked, without having to look and see who was in that room first, in that pub or that disco first. They wouldn't have to be afraid to go anywhere and say we can't go in there because they're in there type of thing. That is wrong and that must stop. We want, as I said, not only justice for the Quinn family over the murder of Paul, but we want something to change in South Armagh, that our young people can live with a little bit more freedom, as they could say in West Cork or in Kerry or in Mayo or something like that, not have to be afraid of who's around. The message on our poster is very simple. Justice for Paul Quinn and a true peace in South Armagh, and I think that's an honourable enough claim to make and demand to make. Now, there are a few other people here with points they want to make. I want to call on Paul's brother James first to say a few words.
There has been a lot of talk that Paul was criminal, and it is not true. As my father said, he was no angel, but he was certainly no criminal. The reason they called him a criminal was that they wanted to say that was the reason he was killed, but that's simply not true either. Paul was killed because he fell out with some people who are associated with an organisation that kills people, so they killed him. It's just that simple. The point of saying he was a criminal and saying he was killed because he was a criminal is so that can pretend that the organisation that killed him doesn't exist anymore, or at least doesn't kill people anymore. That's not true either. Everything we know about Paul's death or murder points in one direction, and in one direction only. Paul's murder, nobody is going to believe there's another gang that size about here that could do something like this. The people who put the criminality stories about must think we are all stupid, but we're not that stupid. We will just keep on telling the truth and eventually everyone will see it. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Seamus Bellion wants to say a few more words on the criminality issue also.
evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a happy new year to you. The campaign for truth and justice scored a major success in the second half of December. The Quinn family no longer have the slur of criminality hanging over their son. The family and the support group are now clearly at one with the Irish government on how this murder happened and who was involved. This means that one of the objectives we have set for ourselves at our formation meeting on the 12th of November has now been met. We had a highly successful public meeting in Crossmaglen on Thursday the 13th of December, which demonstrated the depth of feeling on this murder. There was an orchestrated attempt to disrupt and hijack the meeting, but it collapsed when faced with the anger of 400 good people. The success of that meeting was more particularly the presence of a considerable number of TDs and councillors from south of the border helped bring forward a re-evaluation of the campaign by the Irish government. On Monday the 17th of December, the Quinns met Foreign Minister Dermot Ahern in Dundalk and got a very clear statement that the Irish government had never taken the view that Paul was involved in criminality. The Taoiseach went further in the Dáil on Tuesday the 18th when he said very clearly that the only criminals involved in this case are the ones who murdered Paul. He repeated the message in person the next day when he joined their meeting with Justice Minister Brian Lenihan in Leinster House. And on Friday the 21st at Hillsbury Castle, British Secretary of State Sean Woodward told Breach and Stephen that the British government is now on the same view on the criminality issue. Their view of Provo involvement has also been clarified. The focus of the two governments is naturally on the political issue of the level of authorisation for the beating which brought about Paul's death. Neither they nor the two police forces investigating the murder have excluded the involvement of individual members of the provisional movement. The PSNI Chief Constable and the International Monitoring Commission have already made clear their views that Provos were involved. Like the family, our focus is slightly different. Provo involvement has been absolutely clear from the beginning. Our concern is that individual members of the Provisional IRA with a real or imagined grievance have access to the local command structure and can use its experience and expertise to organise punishment beatings or even murder, right down to a forensic clean-up. It matters little whether this local murder machine had sanction or authorisation from higher up. It still killed Paul. It must be stopped and dismantled. This is a community challenge and a political challenge. It is absolutely unavoidable that those who give political cover for the machine to try to deny its existence must also be challenged. In this case, the political cover took the form of baseless and extremely wounding allegations that Paul was killed in a feud among criminals. Conor Murphy took it a stage further when he stated directly on BBC Spotlight programme that Paul was a criminal. The understandable desire of the Taoiseach and the Irish government to avoid destabilising the power-sharing executive was exploited in a cynical way, so that the Taoiseach was presented as supporting their allegations. This week's clarification means that Conor Murphy can no longer hide behind the Irish government with his false allegations. He has, of course, the alternative of withdrawing and apologising. We fully support the family's position that there can be no meeting with the MP until he does so publicly and in writing. It is too late for him to remove the slur because it no longer has credibility. But speaking ill of the dead is still frowned upon, and he could at least try to undo some of the damage he has done to the Quinn family for the sake of simple decency. Conor Murphy apart, the whole country is now agreed on what this murder was all about and how it happened. One thing that did come out at the Crossmaglen meeting was the degree of Sinn Féin support for the Quinns and their campaign. All this has been made possible by the good, brave people who came to our public meeting in Cullyhanna and Crossmaglen. And the support group thanks them from the bottom of our hearts. Later in the campaign we will organise further meetings in both places so that we can put our gratitude on the record. But for the moment, the focus must be on the next phase of the campaign. Now that our depoliticisation of Paul Quinn's murder is almost complete, We want to focus all our energies on getting people to cooperate fully with the Garda and the police investigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Seamus. It's important to point out that when we talk about what our MP, Conor Murphy, says, or things he did say, for instance, in one programme he talked about that area, he said, full of smuggling and criminal gangs. You know, it's bandit country all over again, only this time as our MP was saying it. But it's important to point out that when we say that, because it's true, it's not an attack on Sinn Féin or an attack on Republicanism. It's an attack on individual people who are saying certain things. I met a long-term friend earlier on at the door there, Quinn and TD, and shook his hand, and we had a chat, and then he spoke with Breach and Stephen, because Quinn hasn't been making scurrilous allegations about Paul, and I do believe he's a man that can have an open mind. And on that issue, I want Sean Quinn to say a few words.
At the Crossmaglen meeting, we were accused of running an anti-Sinn Féin campaign. This is nonsense. We didn't bring Sinn Féin into the Quinn murder case, they brought themselves in. Before Paul's body was cold, they were saying he was killed in the course of a criminal feud and there was no provost involved. Either someone in the provisional IRA sold Jerry Adams a pup and then knew it wasn't true and said it anyway. Conor Murphy went further and said Paul was a criminal. At the time we were saying and doing precisely nothing because our campaign hadn't yet even begun. Sinn Féin got themselves into this by telling lies about Paul and how he was killed. Nobody forced them to say anything, but when they told lies we simply replied with the truth that Paul was no criminal and the provost killed him. We have given Sinn Féin every opportunity to get themselves out of this. We have welcomed their expressions of support for the Quinn family and their call for people to go to the Garda and the police. We have specifically asked the local councillors who have made no allegations against Paul to come in behind our campaign. And we closed the Crossmaglen meeting by again noting that Sinn Féin as an organisation clearly supported the aims of the campaign. However, those who have directly made accusations against Paul must withdraw them. They should not have made the accusations in the first place. Not only were they grossly offensive to a family in grief, they served absolutely no purpose. Nobody who knew Paul or knows his family was going to believe them for a second. In any case, suppose for 1 minute they had have been true, is this supposed to justify battering Paul to death? No, the allegations of criminality were made in a desperate attempt to sell the fairy story that no provosts were involved. Nobody believes this either. Sinn Féin briefly managed to sell their fairy story to two governments who were desperate not to destabilise the political institutions. But it collapsed as soon as the media came to South Armagh and talked to local people. Now the two governments say Paul was no criminal, while the Garda, PSNI and International Monitoring Commission are all agreed on provo involvement. This leaves Conor Murphy all alone. Adams and McGuinness are totally silent on the issue. Our MP has nothing to lose and everything to gain by publicly withdrawing his allegations in clear terms. We invite him to do so now. If he wants to keep saying no provosts were involved, so be it, we know the truth. But we do want Sinn Féin some support. They represent the majority of the area and we want all their supporters to feel completely free to go to the Garda and PSNI. At the moment they are getting a mixed signal because they are being asked to believe a story which most of them know is complete nonsense, lies and a clear cover-up of Paul's murder. There was no feud. Paul was murdered by the provost.
I think Pat McNamee put it well on, I think it was prime time, when somebody mentioned about sort of Paul Quinn drove a diesel lorry. Pat McNamee said, so did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other young men and even a few young women around South Armagh down the years and still today. And I suppose legally it's a crime, but in the eyes of the people of South Armagh, those people, smugglers, etc., were never like, we all know this, they were never looked upon as criminals. A man actually sitting in Bridges' house, the night of the month's mine said to me, he says, you're smuggling around a quarter of our families, he says, in South Armagh. And that's the reality, you know that, like that. Legally, okay. But when a TD in County Louth could stand up and talk about on prime time about smuggling, defrauding the taxpayer. That's true, it does. We know that. And he said it hurt schools and it hurt health and everything else. That's fine. That was on a Tuesday. On the Friday of the same week, it came out in the Irish News that the MP from Union Armagh had given references to 2 multi-millionaires who were being done for defrauding the taxpayer of £6 or £7 million. So you have the sad situation where a fellow with a load of diesel or a box of cigarettes is something of a big-time criminal, but the multi-millionaire who can buck the government and the health of millions upon millions of pounds, he deserves a reference. You see, this to me is hypocrisy, and it's very, very important that we get rid of that and deal with the case on its merits. I want to call now on Gabe Quinn to give us a few words on the issue of justice.
Getting justice. How do we get justice for Paul? Maybe up to 20 people were involved at one level or another in his murder, in the planning or the forensic clean-up. 20 men in South Armagh who are so sure of themselves, so sure of their grip on the community, yes, our community, that they think that they are literally able to get away with murder. You will hear advice from various quarters, from some unusual quarters, that you should go to the Gardaí Síochána or the PSNI with any. They think keep our heads down for another while and all this will be forgot about. And it will be back to business as usual. And you know the terrible thing about it, they are probably right. It's not just fear, not just threats. Let's face it, we have a 30-year recording of looking the other way. We have never in living memory been in a position where going to the police was the accepted way to do things. They have never been challenged for the whole community. But the other thing is, our whole community must show them that things have changed, that the deal is over, that solidarity against the Brits won't save them when they turn on one of their own community. Remember, we owe them nothing, because in 30 long years, the Brits did a lot of bad things, but they never did anything like this. Thank you.
You know, we could take the attitude very easily that nothing will happen, nothing has changed, things will go as they always have gone, but I do believe something has changed. I do believe that enough people in the community want the truth and want justice. And I think that's very, very important. And that's why we're coming to meetings like this. Bridge and Stephen have met with Betty Ahern, Gavin Ahern, Brian Lenahan, Sean Woodward. There are other people to meet too. They'll meet them all. The leader of all the parties is going to meet all them people. But personally, I believe the justice will come from rooms like this. The justice will come from Cullyhanna, Crossmaglen, Blaney, Newry, Drogheda, wherever we go, from the ordinary people on the ground. And believe me, the interest in this campaign is amazing. From way up on the Inishowen Peninsula, a little radio station, community radio station, ringing on a regular basis to know what's happening. People from similar areas, small towns, small villages, rural areas, are identifying with this family, are identifying with this campaign, and are extremely interested, and they want to know what's going on, and they want to help, and they're crying out for justice too. And I do believe we can get justice. And the Gardaí, as I said, are men, they don't tell us where to investigate that. They wouldn't actually, they couldn't do it, it would be totally wrong anyway. What we do know is they have a vast amount of bits and pieces to correlate, to put together, to look through, to discard something, to bring others in. And it's also, it's a bit like, yesterday Steve and myself was in talking to one of the Gardaí, and he said it's a bit like a jigsaw. So you could actually see it that way. You start up getting your four corners, and then the outside bits, then walking in, then everything. So they're starting off, you could almost say, maybe they have the corners, maybe they have some of the bits, but they don't know if there's a bit missing yet. They haven't got that far to, to filling in the final pieces. And that's where the community comes in. You saw something someday, didn't pass that much a mark. You thought, strange, that man doesn't usually be there, kind of thing. Or what was that, the Opium Park there overnight or whatever. Go and tell the guards these wee things. They may be of no importance whatsoever, but they may just fill in with something else that the guards already know. There could be a wee bit that they're waiting for. This is very, very, very important that we do this. I think we can get justice this time. And I think if we get justice this time, we will have a new community, not just in South Armagh, but in the whole border region, and perhaps in the whole of Ireland. I mean, there's been a cry going on now for a few years about policing, capital policing, etc., etc., etc. If this murder is solved, there will be support for policing in South Armagh that nobody ever dreamed there would be for in South Armagh. And the opposite side of the story is true also. If this murder is not solved, you may forget about policing in South Armagh for at least 2 generations, no matter what MP or anything else demands it. This case, and I personally believe that men who said about Paul Quinn, I don't believe without to kill him. I do believe they meant to leave him in a wheelchair or even in his bed as a lesson to the other young people of the area to do what we're told, not to disrespect certain people, etc., etc., etc. I do believe that, and I don't believe any army council or the IRA any level like that sanctioned it, ordered it, or organised it, but I do believe it was organised at South Armagh level. But the repercussions of it are very, very, very major. Had Paul just been beaten, there would be end of story. Because sadly, that's the way we've been living for a long time. But Paul was killed in this brutal fashion, and it has hurt people big time. A lot of people are still afraid to come out publicly, but to come quietly and privately to Breach and Stephen and other people in the committee, to me, and to tell us what they believe and how they feel. And we want to get to the stage where they can all come out, unafraid, and stand up for truth and stand up for justice. Now we're going to call on Jerry McMahon to speak about other victims.
Councillors, I'm here tonight. We would not be here tonight only for what happened to Paul Quinn. As we said, when Paul died, it just brought different meaning to what punishment beatings were all about. A lot of people in the border area of Monaghan would have seen and heard of punishment beatings and said, whoever got that, they got it for doing something A, B or C, so they must be a bad one or wrong one. The rumour machine went around and told everybody done this, that and the other. Now, what's happening in South Armagh is 15, 20 years, there are so many young people who have been beaten to within an inch of their lives, left almost in wheelchairs. I would ask the question, how can you beat somebody to within an inch of their death, which has happened? A brother of mine in April 2004, 20 men took him from his car and beat him with iron bars, baseball bats, anything you name it, slashers. They took to him on the road like you wouldn't do to a dog. This is going on, and if Paul Quinn hadn't died, we wouldn't be here. We would not, Chris Group wouldn't be formed. The punishment basis will still go on, so we've got to stop it. I would say to the young people of South Armagh, we have, as parents and guardians, we will try our best to look after this. We need to protect this because nobody else will. We want this punishment basis to stop for once and for all. And there's more than a machine which is called to get out of it and disband. Jerry Adams said that 13 years ago when the peace process was starting, the IRA hadn't gone away. But the Quinn support group will not go away till we get justice for Paul Quinn. Thank you.
And the sad thing is, folks, that the bullying and the intimidation is still going on. Just over the holiday weekends there, Christmas and the New Year's, there were men threatened over the Jonesboro Drummond area about loud parties. You know, such horrible, terrible crime as being a bit loud at Christmas or New Year, warranted people coming busting in other houses to tell them what they could do and couldn't do. Things like that are going on all the time, and we want an end to all that. We want to be able to live with people in any other country. We're told we're in a new dispensation. Well, let's see it on the ground. Let's see this new dispensation on the ground. I want to call him Paul McCooey now. Where's Paul?
We're very glad to see so many people here tonight. It means a lot for us and for Paul's family that so many people on both sides of the border are backing the Quinns in our campaign for justice. This was a cross-border murder. We have a cross-border campaign, and I hope that very soon a cross-border police investigation will put his murderers behind bars on either side of the border. The murder took place in this jurisdiction, but we all know that the events which led to Paul's death started north of the border. So why was he killed in Monaghan? We think the Provo gang that wanted to give him a beating, in fact wanted to cripple him, probably decided it was politically more acceptable to do so in the south, that the political fallout would be less, which probably would have stuck to their, if they had have done and stuck to the original plan, probably would have happened. There have been a lot of beatings. Remember, if they had not gone so far and had not actually killed Paul, we wouldn't be here tonight. So this gang decided to bring their crime into your area. This 20-man squad feel they can operate safely on either side of the border, feel they can beat and kill without fear of punishment. They believe they have such public backing, not just in Cullyhanna and South Armagh, but in Orem and Castleblayney as well, that no hand will be raised against them, no voice will speak out against them, and that when they go too far and kill a young lad, they believe that they can protect themselves with a campaign of slander against the victim, followed up by a bit of intimidation of anyone who speaks out against them. Why shouldn't they believe that? Look at what they have done and got away with in the past, including the very recent past. Their victims were isolated. Young men were beaten to within inches of their lives. Not just beaten, but severely damaged in spirit. Worst of all, there's a nudge and wink that they must have done something wrong, that they didn't get it for nothing. This time it's different. This time the slander is not working. This time the people stood up, first in Cullyhanna, then in Crossmaglen, and now here in Castleblayney. And we believe that with your help, and more people will stand up. Because we know that if we don't, it will happen again, just as sure as day follows night. We don't underestimate the task that we have taken on. That 20-man gang is hunkered down not too far from here, sitting out the storm, keeping their heads down, and they are saying that this will pass. That this crowd will get tired and go home. We wear them down with rumours and slanders against Paul and political attacks on the campaign, and then we'll just go back to business as usual. And why shouldn't they think that? They've done it before. So we're in this for the long haul. We're not going away. What we have to do is demonstrate that this gang does not have the backing of the people. Not in Cullyhanna, not in Crossmaglen, not in Castleblayney, or in Orem. They have a sort of loyalty from quite a number of people, but they don't have the backing for what they did to Paul during or after his death. And we have to show them that. It will take time. It is only by showing them that we can create a climate in which all people might help the Gardaí will come forward. It is only by showing them that we can prevent this happening again. It is only by showing them that we can get rid of the murder machine. We need your help. This gang still has a degree of control in South Armagh, even though it's weakening. They have none here. We need you to give courage to people in South Armagh who are up against it. We need you to let them know they have your backing. First and foremost, we need TDs, councillors, private citizens, to speak out against Paul's murder in letters to local papers, in community bodies, in towns and county councils, or wherever your voice can be heard. We need to take our campaign further throughout the border counties and further south. And we are looking for volunteers to help us do that. We have had a promise to host a meeting in Drogheda, but we would like to go to Carrickmacross and Monaghan and Dundalk if we can identify a few people here who can help us organise the meetings. They don't have to be all large public meetings. All we need is a platform to speak out. And of course we need funding. There are problems sending money across the border to our account in Crossmaglen. So soon a separate account will be set up here in Castleblayney. At each of these meetings we would like to leave behind a small number of contacts who will keep in touch with us, keep the torch alight, keep up the pressure. And wherever we go, we will ask the people to use their influence to support the Gardaí investigation. South Armagh deserves truth and justice, and so does Monaghan.
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to call on our Treasurer, Barbara Rooney, to give us a brief rundown on our financial situation. Just a point of interest, when we formed our working committee, we didn't even really know what we were going to do or how we were going to go about our things. And we didn't even think that we were going to need, various offices filled. Some of us, we don't need a secretary, When somebody got up and threw £20 on the table, somebody else on the same, so they'd be right, we need a treasurer. Barbara got the job as treasurer. And we had our second meeting about a week or 10 days later. We realised we didn't need a secretary because writing to political parties, councils, all these things, we needed somebody with word processing skills, computer skills, and again, poor Barbara had a fault with that job too, so she's a double jobber on our committee, and well fit for what she is. So Barbara gave us a brief rundown on the financial situation.
When we met to form a committee on Monday the 12th of November, we took up a collection and raised about £400 on the spot to launch the campaign. Since then, we've received a number of donations from north and south of the border, also as far as New York. Some people have sent cheques directly to the Quinn family. To date, our expenses have been 1,500 flyers, 500 small posters, 10 courier board signs we have erected around Collyhanna, some newspaper advertising also. Down the line there will be some small expenses connected with the website. It's www.quinnsupport.com. Costs have been low because the press had a strong interest in the case, but that won't continue to be the case. As time goes on, it is not longer the murder of Paul that is the centre of the media story. It is the campaign itself. We saw that at the Collyhanna and Crossmaglen meeting. It was the fact that people in South Armagh were standing up that had become the focus of the story. That is where we have to keep the focus in the future, and it's going to cost more. Public meetings are cheap, but we are going to need outdoor posters, and they are dear. We are going to need several £1,000s to cover South Armagh and the surrounding areas, and to keep it covered. We may also have to rely on advertising more in the future. So I'm asking you now to make a small donation at the door at the end of the meeting before you leave. We need to administer the funds properly, so we have set up a bank account with 3 trustees. Myself, Jim McAllister and Seamus Bellew. The account is held at Bank of Ireland Crossmaglen. The name of the account is Quinn Support Group, and the account number is 8220751. I also want to appeal to anyone with skills or experience in raising money to come to our aid by getting in touch with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. We're going to move on now to hearing from elected representatives who are in the room at the moment. And the first person I spoke to in that line, as I mentioned earlier, was TD Quivon O'Quillan, whom I've known for many, many years. And I told Quivon that I'd give him the choice to be the first speaker from the floor tonight. And again, that is also on the point that neither myself as a person nor this group is anti-Sinn Féin or anti any particular party. I personally have a different analysis of the political situation in Ireland that Sinn Féin has, but surely I'm entitled to that without being a traitor or a reprobate or a reptile or something like that. But as I said, Quivon and I have never fallen out and we don't intend to. So do you wish to come up, Quivon, or speak from the floor?
Up to the top.
Goramagat Jim, and to extend in the first instance, and not for the first time, repeated time and time again here, both in the constituency and the opportunities afforded me as a Dáil representative on the floor of the Dáil Chamber, I extend here today my own personal and my party's sincerest expression of sympathy to Stephen and Bríd and to the Quinn family. And I believe that that has been sincerely accepted. As Jim has indicated, before the commencement of the meeting, I had the opportunity to speak with both Stephen and Bríd in the lobby of the hotel here, where we spoke briefly, we shook hands. And I think that that was an important moment. And I hope that tonight's meeting will, mark a new direction in terms of the address of what is the core objective of the Quinn family, and an objective that I believe is universally respected by all opinion in this room. I have to say, as a Sinn Féin TD, I am proud of the tradition that I represent. And I represent here tonight as an elected voice, not only my elected colleagues here in County Monaghan, but indeed my colleagues in South Armagh and throughout the island of Ireland. And at no time, and I think it's an important point to share with each and every one of you, since this terrible, terrible event, a horrendous murder that I absolutely and roundly condemn, and have done so time and time again, I have spoken to many Republicans here in this county, in South Armagh, and in the wider border district. And I want to share here tonight, and I'm saying this truthfully and honestly to the Quinn family and everyone in this room, I have never once heard a Republican voice, man or woman, in any of the personal conversations, engagements we have had, speaking about this terrible event last October. Never once have I heard any of those voices in any way mellow on the public, committed and stated position that I and our collective public representatives have stated time and time again. Nobody in any way inferred, sure, it was this or it was that or whatever. And that's a very, very important thing, because what is publicly said, I know, is privately held and believed. And it is very, very important. If tonight's meeting, a meeting such as this, are to serve the real purpose here tonight, we have got to try to avoid felon setting, labelling of political views in any shape or form in relation to what happened in this county and the terrible event that led to the murder of Paul Quinn. Whatever the facts and the story behind this terrible event, a heinous act, it can be described no other way. The reality of it is that so much of what is being said is about whether Paul was or he wasn't, he was this or he was that. The reality of it is he was, like each and every one of us in this room, a human being. And what happened to him, irrespective of what anybody believes of his character, his activities, his opinions, his outlook on life, whatever, nobody, in any circumstances, would have deserved to meet the terrible death that he was subject to. And I have to say, that while quite a lot of what has been said here tonight, I agree with, and some of what I've heard here tonight, I disagree with. That for me, it isn't the issue as to whether Paul was involved in some activities or he wasn't. What happened to Paul, and quite rightly already said and referred here tonight, was a criminal act, and those responsible were criminals, and no other name applied. I believe that this campaign, the Quinn family, can sow the seeds, as others can, of very serious disaffection, distrust, and the lack of harmony and cohesion within their own community. if we don't all rise above the whole issue of what has separated voices heretofore. We can't turn back what has been said. People will have their views and opinions. I don't have views because I never knew Paul Quinn. I don't live in the community and I can't offer an opinion other than the opinions that I have had shared with me. And for me, it is absolutely academic as to whether Paul was involved in this or that or the other. I say again that the one guiding point that stands high above it all and which everyone unites 100% is that what happened to Paul was absolutely wrong and cannot be accepted under any circumstances. And I appeal here tonight. I appeal here tonight because Jim talked about being open-minded. And it's not easy to come before a room and with a strong emotion and the great hurt and pain that the Quinn family clearly feel and have felt and will feel right through their lives before them. It's not easy. But I'm appealing to people, and I respect the fair hearing that you're giving me. I'm asking you to think for a moment. Will we serve the objective of the achievement of truth and justice for the Quinn family if we continue to divide on what one elected voice or any other opinion may have offered as a view of Paul and his character in his lifetime? I have it to say that I stand before you as a citizen of these counties, a public elected representative of this constituency, and I am 100% behind the campaign to secure truth and justice. But I'm not standing alone in that demand, and any inference that my colleague, Conor Murphy, is in any way at a variance or a distance or a remove from what I am saying here tonight, I want to absolutely scotch that view. I have spoken to Conor Murphy on many occasions, and he is an honourable, elected representative of the people of his constituency. And I am saying to you here tonight that I know that he holds as sincerely as I do, and those others that I represent and have spoken to, and wants to see the same objective realised. And my appeal here tonight is to the Quinn family, as we have met and greeted graciously here already at the outset of this meeting, that we would repeat that together, and not in the distant future, but in the near future, together along with Conor and other elected voices, that the community can unite, and that those who have information that they should be proffering to the police services on either side of the border can be in no doubt of where the community stands, that there is no divergence, there is no difference, there is no division, that the people of these border counties are absolutely united across all political opinion in the demand for truth and justice in Paul's memory. That is my commitment. That is my appeal here tonight. And I ask people to think seriously about what we can achieve. We must ensure that tonight's meeting represents a turning point and that we all move forward together. Thank
you, David. There's a hand up down the back. No, at the moment we're going to deal with the TDs and councillors first, and then we'll come to be time for everybody to have their say, or depending on how time actually works. I'm not blacking you out. We will come back to you shortly. But at this stage we're dealing with TDs, etc. Thank you very much, Quinn, and you made the point about people disaffecting the community. There are a lot of very, very angry people. Very angry people, particularly very, very angry young people.
Especially after what we said.
Somehow we must... Kevin, please, Kevin. Everybody will have their say. Everybody will have their say. This again is why we need to solve this this crime, and everybody's entitled to a viewpoint, and putting it as Quinn did quietly and forthrightly. That's not a problem for us at this table. We said at the start, we don't ask everybody to accept our analysis. That is true, we don't. I'm going to next call, just in order of how the name was given to me, T.D. Margaret Conlon.
Thank you, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, and the Quinn support group. I, like Keevy, want to extend my personal and deepest sympathy to Stephen and Breed on the death of their son. No parent should have to endure what you are going through at this moment in time. And it's made all the more difficult for you by the fact that it was a heinous and barbaric crime. A young man cut down in the prime of his life, battered to a pulp, and no parent should have to come to terms with that. We must all accept that there can only be law and order by recognised police forces north and south of the border. And no person or persons have the right or entitlement to take the law into their own hands and to dish out law and order as they see fit. The Lord giveth life, and only the Lord may take it away, and no person or persons are entitled to do that. I am here this evening because I support your quest for truth and justice. I believe that you are entitled to that. It's the very least you are entitled to. And that the criminals who masterminded and who carried out this crime must be brought to justice. And until such time as that happens, the grieving process for you can only begin then. The Irish government are firmly behind the quest for truth and justice. I was asked to facilitate a meeting with Minister for Justice Brian Lenihan and with the Taoiseach, and I was happy to do that. And it was clearly stated, our objective, that we are fully behind your quest for truth and justice. The Minister for Justice stated clearly that the investigation is active and ongoing and will continue to be so. He commended people both sides of the border for their cooperation, and he commended both the PSNI and the Garda Síochána for their cooperation in attempting to have this crime solved. That investigation will continue. There is a huge amount of information coming into the Gardaí, but I am appealing tonight to anybody, and I do believe there are people out there who know what happened, who know what went on behind the scenes. I am appealing that those people would come in confidence to either the PSNI or the Garda Síochána and deliver that information. For the parents of Paul, for his brother and sister, for his family and friends, so that their hurt may be lessened in some way. Their pain will never go away, but let's give them truth and justice, and maybe it will be the catalyst that will bring a new kind of peace to South Armagh, and the memory of Paul Quinn then will live on. Ar Yeshte Goreva Anadu.
Next we'll call on Rory O'Hanlon, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Like Margaret, I would like to sympathise again with the Quinn family. I appreciate the trauma that they have been through and continue to be through as a result of what was an appalling atrocity, which we recognise was committed on our side of the border here. I called to the Quinn household with Geraldine Donnelly, and I have to say I was very impressed with the dignity of Breed and Stephen and the family in how they were approaching what was an appalling crime. And I remember vividly that Breed had two requests. One was that the name of Stephen would be cleared, that the name of Paul would be cleared, and the second one, that the perpetrators would be brought to justice in the correct way through the courts of law, through the judicial process. And I have to say that I appreciated very much the focus that the family had on those two issues. I'm glad to say I reported back to the Taoiseach and to some of the ministers, including Dermot Ahern, and I'm glad to say that on the visit to Dublin it was made very clear that the criminals and the only criminals were the people who perpetrated this appalling atrocity. So one of the issues that remains to be resolved is to see the perpetrators brought to justice. Now, everybody who has any information whatsoever has a role to play. They can bring that information to the Gardaí or to the PSNI. And I'm glad to say that from all the reports we hear that they're working very well on this case, will continue to do so, but it is important that anybody who has any information, that they give that information to the police forces north or south. It's important also that people support the Quinn support group. They're entitled to the support of everybody. They're entitled to it not just to ensure that Paul gets justice, but as Kevin McMahon or Jerry McMahon pointed out, there have been, and we are very conscious of it in this country, there have been a number of beatings in South Armagh over the years, and unfortunately in very recent years and very recent times, and we would be very anxious to see that that stops. I know from my own experience of a lifetime that the people of South Armagh want normal policing, they want normal justice in their society, they want a normal civilised society like everybody else, and they're entitled to that. And I believe that that can come about, and it's very encouraging to see the support of the people, particularly the people in South Armagh, supporting the Quinn group, coming out and showing their true colours and showing that they want an end to the sort of criminality that we have seen for far too long. So I would appeal to everybody, support the Quinn support group, but above all make sure that we all play our part in seeing that the perpetrators are brought to justice. Very much.
I'm now calling Seymour Crawford to say a few words, please. And it's worth pointing out, as we said earlier on, the support of the people of South Armagh on one hand is very, very good for the family, good for the morale, good for their health even, and the support of TDs and councillors adds to that, and it's grand that they're coming here and speaking up, even if like we've been with maybe a slightly different perspective, that's still the way we need to go. Thank you all very much for coming.
Chairman, Stephen and Bridge, Oireachtas colleagues, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I don't intend to speak too long here tonight because I did have the opportunity of speaking to many of you at the meeting across Midland. I just want to add my sympathy to the Quinn family on the dreadful death of Paul. He was murdered in the most heinous possible way, and nobody deserves that. I also want to say that I'm glad that some things have moved on since we were in Crossmaglen. I'm glad that Minister Ahern did meet the family the following day, and that subsequently the Taoiseach withdrew his comment on the record of the law, and that the Quinn family can be assured that nobody in Irish government has any suggestions that Paul had anything to do with criminality. In fact, as Dr. O'Hanlon has already said, the only criminals involved in this are those that murdered Paul in such a cruel way. Our only aim here is, and I have to be very careful unfortunately, but what words are used, because in my effort in Crossmaglen to try and bring about a unified approach to make sure that the only aim was to bring those to justice, some of my words were twisted afterwards. So I'm very conscious of that. And all I want to do is to encourage people to, for the first time possibly ever, to take courage in their hand. And for once and for all, let people know what they know. Because there's no way that 9, 10 or 12 people took part in this situation, obviously under advice, orders, or whatever we would like to put it, to do what they did on Paul without a lot of people knowing about it. And for God's sake, and for the sake of the Quinn family, and for the sake of the future peace of this country, let people come forward, take the courage in their hands, and make sure that those who perpetrated this particular issue are brought to justice. As again Rory pointed out, meetings have taken place before. People didn't just die, but in this case, Paul was murdered. And what we want to see, those of us who are committed to democracy and to the future of this island home of ours, is that the perpetrators are brought to justice. Then we can move forward in peace. Then there'll be a true memorial to Paul for the sacrifice that he and his family had to suffer. I just want to assure you of the support of my Fine Gael party. Fergus O'Dowd and Charlie Flanagan met you in my absence because I was away that day when you were in the door. Andy Kenny will be coming down to see you at whatever time we can arrange before I leave here tonight. It'll not be weeks away, it'll be very soon. We are committed to work with the other political parties to make sure that anything that can be done to support the Gardaí and the PSNI to make sure that this issue is brought to conclusion and that peace is permanent in our land. God bless, and I just want to pray that the Quinn family can be given the support and the courage to carry the terrible burden that they have to carry at the present time.
Thank you, Seymour. Now we hear from the Loud TD Seamus Jack.
Thanks, Chairman. It's the first opportunity I have publicly to lend my support and to extend my sympathy to Stephen and to Breach Quinn and to the extended Quinn family here in Castleblayney tonight. I think the number in attendance graphically underlines and illustrates how the community in Cullyhanna and Crossmaglen, in the Castleblayney area, indeed into my own constituency of Louth, how they feel about this most brutal of murders. There has been, over the last 35 years, many brutal murders committed in the border areas and indeed further and more deeply in to the 6 counties. But for brutality, it would be hard to match the pain and the suffering and the brutality that was visited on Paul Quinn in this particular instance out in Tullycourt. One can only begin to think and reflect on how the Quinn family could come to terms, and indeed the wider community in its immediate locality could come to terms with what was visited on Paul Quinn and on his family. There's no doubt that the spontaneous rising up of the community, and it's a great tribute to the organising committee who have lent their support, and we have got to remember that perhaps in some instances it might not have been easy for them to organise and to mobilise communities to ensure that the perpetrators of this brutality realise that we're living in a democracy. we're living in a society where democracy has got to function. For too long, democracy has been dysfunctional. Democracy functioning properly is about the Paul Quinns or the Breach Quinns or the Seamus Gerks or Seymour Crofts of this world being able to move around freely without fear or favour in their local community. It's not about deciding whether they can visit this pub and not visit that pub, or not go out on the street at 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning. It's about people being able to freely do all these things without being intimidated and chased out of their community. I think that, what's happened in relation to this is really perhaps a bedding down of democracy in this immediate area. It's about the silent people in the community standing up and saying, enough is enough. We are not going to tolerate any more intimidation. We want democracy, fair play and an open society to function in South Armagh, in South Monaghan or Mid Monaghan or North Louth or wherever it might be. That's what it's about, and that's the sort of statement that the public meetings that are being spontaneously organised are saying to the wider community in the counties right across the country. These meetings, of course, are basically about the truth and the justice of what happened. It's about ensuring that the police authorities, the PSNI north of the border and the Garda Síochána here, with an exceptional level of cooperation as in this case, that they can pull all the details together. And those who have perpetrated this atrocity will be brought to justice. And that will be the real statement about democracy functioning in these parts. We wish them well, and I urge and encourage anybody in the community who has any information, no matter how small it might be, to make it available to the police authorities.
Thank you, Chairman. Are there any other TDs that I've missed here? We have an apology from Minister Brandon Smith TD, who hadn't intended to be here but is inadvertently delayed in Dublin. And before we go on to the councillor speakers, I want to move back a little bit. I missed one of the committee speakers in the earlier stage of the proceedings. Colin Quinn wants to say a few words on Paul himself.
Paul was a good-hearted young person who was full of life. He was generous, kind, and always game for a laugh. He was good crack to be with, and his personality was upbeat, and he enjoyed the company of all his friends. Paul was easygoing, with an innocent nature. Lived each day as it come. He was open, straightforward, harboured no malice to anyone. He wasn't afraid to stand up for himself, or others if he thought they were getting a bit of a raw deal. Bullies or their connections could not and did not break the spirit. In an attempt to intimidate Paul, in his innocence, he would never have dreamt that anyone would stoop to the depth of savagery that it did. Paul was always laughing, smiling and tanning the orange. He was simply fun to be with. He'll never be forgotten for his humorous personality, his happy-go-lucky approach to life. Paul, you're being sadly missed and always will be. And for those who have had the pleasure of knowing Paul, a terrible void has been left. R.I.P. Paul, your friends.
Thanks, Colin. I think we have some councillors who want to say a few words. Yeah, go on ahead. If you just make your way maybe forward here, we just take a turn. And as time is moving on, we maybe ask you to try around, say, 3 minutes. Okay.
Thanks, Cahir. My name is Gary Carville. I'm the Mayor of Monaghan County Council, and I'm here as I was in the night across McLean to lend my support publicly once again to your campaign, to say publicly once again that we in Monaghan condemn and absolutely abhor what happened. The people who perpetrated this horrendous act have no support in the area that I represent, which is the county of Monaghan, and indeed this horrendous atrocity happened here in my own electorate area of Castleblayney, just out in Orem, which is part of the area I represent. They have no support in this community, and what I am encouraging here once again, as I said in Crossmaglen that night, for people to go to the authorities, to go to the Gardaí or the PSNI with whatever information you have. Because democracy, that's what this is ultimately about. We cannot have people holding our communities, be they in Crossmaglen, Cullyhanna, in Castleblayney or anywhere else. We cannot have people holding our communities to ransom. And if we allow this to go unchecked, that is what is happening, and that's what will continue to happen. The Irish people voted in 1998 to accept the Good Friday Agreement. They voted North and South for the first time since 1918 on the same day. And the whole basis of the institutions since that is on the basis of that agreement. Our police forces are on the basis of that agreement. Our law and order is on the basis of that, and on the basis of our constitution and our law. And if we wipe that away, as other speakers have said here tonight, we wipe away the whole basis of our community, the whole basis of our being. So I appeal to you very strongly, as I have done at Monaghan County Council and in various other ways over the recent months. Support the Gardaí Síochána and the PSNI by bringing forward whatever information. Support the Quinn family most of all, and support our own community, Castleblayney and South Armagh, working together. This is a community that interacts with each other in so many ways, right across the social and economic spectrum. We are so much integrated here. I think it's important for all of us to pull together, work together, and to bring a peace that's based on justice, because peace without justice cannot exist, but a peace that's also based on truth, and ultimately a peace that will give us all hope, because without hope we're going nowhere.
Chairperson, my name is Councillor Jackie Crowe, Castleblayney. I'm Mayor of the Town Council. Can I take this first opportunity to welcome Stephen and Bridge and our family here to Castleblayney tonight and ensure them of our full support in their quest for truth and justice. Just a couple of nights after Paul's brutal murder in Orem, I think it was 3 or 4 nights, we had our monthly town council meeting. I think we were probably the first town council on this side of the border to meet in Monaghan after Paul's death. I think we were all shocked at that meeting, totally shocked at the brutality of his death, and that it happened in our county, just a couple of miles from this hotel. Somebody earlier on said that you usually come to this hotel for weddings. I was actually at a wedding in this hotel on the Saturday night that the word Saturday night, Sunday morning, when I was leaving, and I heard of this brutal crime that happened in the vicinity of this hotel, 6 miles out the road. Can I also take this opportunity to convey our deepest sympathy, which at that meeting in Castleblayney Town Council, total condemnation of young Paul's death was unanimous among all our councillors, and the council staff were totally shocked at what happened. And can we convey our deepest sympathy to you, Bridge and Stephen, and your family, because we know what you're going through, and we hope that sooner rather than later that you will see truth and justice, and that will only bring a small closure on this sad and tragic episode in your lives, because it will always remain with you. Can I at this stage, as my counterpart, Councillor Gary Cargill, the Mayor of Monaghan County Council, has stated, that anybody, and that was another thing at our meeting, and it was so adamant, anybody with any information whatsoever should cooperate with the investigating authorities north and south of the border. The lead investigators being the Garda Síochána here in Monaghan. And I would ask that they would go with no matter what small piece of information that they have and present it to them. It might be helpful. Could I, in conclusion, Chairperson, I just want to say this here. I'm a Sinn Féin councillor. I fully support the Quinn family in their quest for justice. But can I totally endorse the words that my colleague Deputy O'Keelan spoke here tonight? I want to say I've known him, like Jim, for years, and I want to say this here. Those words were spoke with sincerity and honesty, and I would ask the people here to accept and respect them in the spirit that they were given. Can I finish, Chairperson, just once again saying that I certainly support Stephen, Bridge and the Quinn family in their quest to have the perpetrators of their young son's murder brought to justice.
Thank you, Jackie.
Mr. Chairman, Stephen and Bridge, and ladies and gentlemen, my name is Hugh McIlvanny from the Clonus electoral area of County Monaghan, and like Deputy Clerk here tonight, it's my first opportunity to sympathise with Stephen and Bridge in the loss of their son, and I do that sincerely. Whenever the meeting was held in Cullyhanna, ladies and gentlemen, we had an invitation from the SDLP to attend that meeting. I'm a Fine Gael member of Monaghan County Council, and at our county organisation I ensured that our party would be represented there, and it was ably represented by Deputy Crawford and the Mayor of our county, Gary Carville. When you came to Castleblayney tonight, Mr. Chairman, I made sure I would make myself available to be here to show my support for you. Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, at the earlier part of this meeting tonight, when I listened to the contributions from the Quinn support group, this is not a room for the faint-hearted. And this is a room that I enjoy being in, because I am not faint-hearted either, nor have I been ever from I was first elected to Monaghan County Council in 1974. A politician I am, but with a small p, but my voice is normally heard in the areas that I represent. And I'm delighted to be here to give my support to the Quinn group. My logo as a public representative, or the principle I stand by, is Fiat Justitia, Ruat Caeli. I will stand for justice till the heaven falls. And does not work nicely in with your logo, truth and justice for Paul, and true peace in South Armagh. Ladies and gentlemen, the courage and the support that's been shown by Stephen and Bridge Quinn here tonight, and by you good people that are on the committee, is excellent. But in fairness to you, with the geographical area that you live and work in, with the history that's in that geographical area, and I'm not being critical, I'm being factual, it's unfair that you people should expect that ordinary decent people that live in your area, and I'm sure 90% of them are going to come forward to you good people here and to trust you with what they know. I don't think it's fair to expect the vermin that carried out this criminal act to come forward. Anybody who thinks that is in crowd cuckoo land. But there are people who know them, and these are the people we expect to come forward. And I'm going to make a proposal to you now, Mr. Chairman, and to your committee, and to all of the people here tonight. What we should have here tonight, along with all of you courageous people and myself that are here, we should have the Minister for Justice here in the south of Ireland. We should have the Minister of Justice in Northern Ireland. We should have the spokesmen for justice from all the political parties at this meeting tonight. We should have the Chief Constable and constables of the PSNA sitting up here tonight. And we should have the Garda Commissioner and his assistant and sergeants and inspectors of the Garda Síochána sitting sidey by sidey with them, showing us, the ordinary people, that there is confidence among law and order and justice people. And I'm proposing that as and from here on in, whatever meetings are held, whether they be in Drogheda, Carrickbrook or Monaghan Town, or Clonus may invite you to as well, as the representative for that particular area, I'm asking that you people, the board, the executive here, would invite all of those people to those meetings. And when you see it's the optic of that that gives the confidence to the people to not be afraid. So whenever those people would attend at all of those meetings, I'm of the opinion that this murder can be solved. And Jim and Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, I'm also of the opinion that it could be a new dawning, not alone in
this evening, and it has been said to me a number of times that Paul was brought there not to be killed, but to get a beating. To me, ladies and gentlemen, that does not dilute the wrongness of what was intended there. A group of men, a group of people gathering a young man to treat him in this way. I believe that what you are doing and the huge volume of support that has been shown and the courage of the family and the committee, we must bring an end to this type of behaviour. All those who have been involved in this crime, the wrongness of this crime, must be brought to justice. And I add my voice to those who have asked anyone, with whatever small piece of information they have, to go to the Gardaí or the PSNI to ensure that those who are responsible come to go through the justice process and are put where they deserve, well behind bars and out of our communities in Armagh, Monaghan and right across Northern Ireland and the Republic. Again, I offer you my sympathies and the full support, and indeed commend all involved and the huge attendance which this hall is not fit to hold here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That appears to be the last of the councillors, so we will throw it up onto the floor now. Time is pressing on more than we thought. We had hoped to get away at 9:45. Obviously we can't do that now. It's 20 to 10, so we'll see how we're going around 10, and we take it from there. So, along with that, right, so if you want to come up, you can come up, or Colin here will take the mic to speakers in turn. And I would ask you only just to again, bearing in mind the time is pressing, to try and keep it as short and sweet as you can, and to please deal with the main point.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunities to express my views. My name is Brendan Hodges, private citizen, and I work with and live in the Mullaban area. I work as a trade union organiser for the day job, and I work with youth in Mullaban. And I don't know Bridge or Stephen, and I didn't know Paul. But I have to say, Chair, that as a parent of 5 children, one of which I buried with our mother, I can empathise with Bridge and Paul at the loss of a child. I understand totally the whole despair that you have in burying your child. There's something just not right about that. I read Stephen's comments in relation to the manner of Paul's death, which again I agree with. It just adds that dimension to it. But I went to the Crossmaglen public meeting, Chair, and I went to support the Quinn family on behalf of my own family, because that's how we felt about it, and they needed support. I had an open mind about the forum, about the justice campaign, and I went to that and I listened to different contributions. I listened to a man about his uncle 30 years ago and the disappointment and hurt that they had in relation to the complicity of the law and order in the state about that man's death. I listened to another man in respect of his speaking and his anger that there was no legislative closure to his situation. But why I come to speak and come back to this meeting, Chair, again to show my support for the family, was the contribution made by a man from Cooley when he talked about the Oliver family. And I don't know if there's any of that family or people here from the Cooley area, but what I do know is that my own family and cousins were ostracised by such a campaign, and I worry about that, and I'm concerned about that, Chair, and that's why I come to talk about it. I don't want to put a discord note in here, but that's what I want to come and talk about. That family that were the pinnacle of their own community, that were the organisers of the Cooley Kickers, that were the organisers of the credit unions and everything else, were ostracised totally in the wrong. And it took high courts to vindicate that family. And we need to be careful, and our group needs to be careful about that, Chair. And that's why, from my point of view, I'm concerned about this. I think that a lot of the contributions and a lot of the contributions you made, Chair, are correct. Absolutely correct. But I do say that I think that the final cruelty will be that forums like this will not deliver the justice that we need. Where politics and where politicians gather, there will be politicking, there's no doubt about it. And everyone talks about there's no one stupid and everybody's intelligent and all the rest of it. And if you can tell me that there's not politicking going on with this young man's horrific death, I'd be hard to be convinced. There is, unfortunately. And it was called here tonight to send this whole campaign in a different direction. And it has to go in a different direction. It has to be left. I want to see Breed and Stephen on television, on radio, and media, and everywhere else. I'm not particularly interested in seeing the SDLP or anybody else, for that matter, lauding themselves about on the backs of this tragedy. I'm very interested in hearing what the family has to say, and I'm very interested in getting justice. And I'm glad to hear that there are deputies here, elected deputies here tonight, that's going to open doors for them to get them that justice that's well deserved. So again, Breach and Stephen, on behalf of myself and my own family, I commiserate totally with your position.
Thank you, Brandon. I think I must respond to some of that, because again, there's a suggestion there that people on this committee are manipulating the committee or using it for their own reasons or whatever. And that's totally wrong. The Quinn family wanted help, appealed for help, and people came and gave them help, which includes the SDLP, which includes me. And they were pleased with that and thankful for it and are still. And in fact, there was a letter in today's Irish Newly report, which I just read out from Stephen and Breed, replying to a man from South Armagh who'd been writing a number of letters in various papers over this past few weeks, and I won't name the man. But she said, the letter said from Stephen and Breed, we, the parents of Paul Quinn, found the attack in our Quinn support group by naming the man, which had appeared in a number of newspapers, both distasteful and hurtful. When our son was murdered in a most brutal fashion, we, for a number of reasons, had no doubt as to who had murdered him. We asked for help and formed a committee at an open public meeting in our home. We went to the public, to the community, with our aims in Cullyhanna, Castleblayney, and this week in Castleblayney. We're not hiding. We're not meeting faceless people. We're up front. We want justice for Paul and justice for the young people of South Armagh. That's our cause, is what the letter says. How, Mr. So-and-so, can go into the community for help? How asking for help from everybody, from all parties? How can that be divisive? How can that be demonising? How can that be harmful to the community that nobody really knows? We've been terribly hurt by the brutal murder of Paul, by the nature of the murder and the beatings of his 3 friends. And our hurt was added to by statements from people in high places about Paul. Statements now corrected by all but one party, thanks to the work of our support group. The hurt is again being added to by people like the writer, attacking us and our support group. Asking things like where were we at some other time is not only childish, but serves no purpose except a narrow political purpose, the very thing that the group are being accused of. Where or who, they actually asked the gentleman who wrote the letter, is he, because he hasn't come near them, he hasn't rang them, he hasn't come to the family to offer help or advice, unlike those he is condemning who have the grace and courage to stand with us. He appears to have nothing to say about murderers and kidnappers. They go on to say we give heartfelt thanks to all who are helping us in any way, great or small, and heartfelt thanks to all who have attended our public meetings, as well as the hundreds and hundreds who have called us, visited us and written to us. Your support gives us strength, and we will fight for as long as it takes. And I say on behalf of the group that we will stand beside Breach and Stephen and Cathy and James and fight with them for as long as it takes until we get justice for Paul Quinn. And I would
I just want to say that I would not be here tonight, nor I wouldn't have been at any of the meetings, nor I wouldn't have been at the meeting in Stephen and Breach's house in the first place, if our local MP had to stand up and come out behind Stephen and Breach. I would not be here. And that is the only reason I'm here, is because the local MP for the area did not stand up and come out and help Stephen and Breach. That's the only reason that I'm here.
Thanks, Chairman. And just on that point, the man down the back there indicating all the time, we want to come up with the mic there, but just on that point Seamus made, nobody expected Conor Murphy to stand up and say, The eyes aren't good. Stand up and say the IRA killed Paul Quinn. But had the MP said, did he just simply say, whoever killed Paul Quinn must be dealt with. Whoever killed Paul Quinn a criminal. That's all you had to say. You didn't have to say it wasn't this particular people.
Just to follow up on that point, I didn't come here to speak. I came here to listen to somebody else speak. But just on what the chairman just said there, I sat down there and listened to hypocrisy. And I feel very sorry for the Quinn family to listen to hypocrisy. Your child's dead, and I don't know what to do. But to listen to somebody up here, I tell you, my name is Benton Campbell. I used to be a trade union president for the Irish Transport and General Workers Union. And I was seeing such hypocrisy in my life. Somebody go and ask other people, go and tell the police, go and tell the guards. Why didn't Conor Murphy lead from the front and tell who killed the people, man? Let him do it. And let that, what do you call it, PD? I don't even know his name. Conor Murphy. I'm sorry I can't speak. I apologise for not speaking Irish properly. But the one thing that the Quinn probably don't want hypocrisy. And I hope that you don't get hypocrisy from anybody. I'm not here looking for any votes. Right, and like a lot of the politicians over here. And I thought, said Hillary Clinton, we're going to she'll be looking for a vote, or what do you call it, or something. Listen, with all due respect, all due respect to you,
thank you, Brandon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Fred Lai, and I am a good friend and future son-in-law of your neighbour, Vincey Traynor. Now, whilst I've listened to a lot of talk here tonight about justice and true justice is what we all need, I'd like to point out that because, Jim, you pointed your finger of blame at that older man who should have a bit more sense, and his wife and his family have went through a sustained campaign of intimidation and terror since. Now, it's no secret that his house has been attacked on a number of occasions with windows broken, fire extinguishers letting off. Well, it might be a secret to the SDLP because apart journeying from Vincey's lorry being burnt 100 yards away from your house, I don't believe you ever contacted Vincey about it. But what I would like to say, Jim, is I don't know how you can sleep in your bed at night only yards from Vincey Traynor's door, when, among others, your son plants, just because he can't get it through the letterbox to the door, plants an explosive device outside the house of Vincey Traynor. Now, there is video evidence of it, and in line with your group's campaign, that has been handed over to the authorities. Just want to give you genuine proof.
That's fine, Fred, and if there is, that's the job to do. Then we you know.
Give all the information to the police.
I wonder what the explosive device consisted of. But it would be interesting to know, some people are interested in, you know, well, I'm not going to get down that line about various things, because again, we're into what about it. We're here to deal with a murder. A murder. Kidnapping. Yeah. This committee here, and in particular Breach Quinn here, Breach Quinn said that window breaking or any of these things not only done a disservice to the campaign for justice to Paul, but that it hurt her and Stephen, it hurt the family, it hurt them, maybe more than it hurt the people whose window was broke or whatever. But I still think that murder is the one we must focus on. We have called, and we call again here tonight, no window breaking, no carry on with any of that thing, because it does not help, it detracts from the case. Who's next?
Ladies and gentlemen, nobody here knows me. I'm originally from Crossmaglen, name's O'Callaghan. I've heard a lot here tonight, and I'm just going to make a number of comments. Number one, it took me £35 to come from Newry to be here, and it'll take me the same to get back. By the time I had finished speaking, it may cost me a lot more. If I end up in the same place as Paul Quinn, fair enough. I'm 54, I don't see myself living to 108, so I've come further than I have to go. So here's a bombshell for all concerned, especially the last man that spoke, that was worried about broken windows. On the 24th of August, 1998, in the middle of the first peace initiative, my property on the Omeath Road at Fathom Line was raided. It was raided in a similar fashion to Paul Quinn was demised. 3 carloads in a van raided my property, and they were led by the now Deputy Mayor of Newry, Charlie Casey, along with a number of other paramilitaries along with them.
No names, please.
I have no parliamentary privilege, let them sue me. And that may not be allowed, okay? No names, no pack drill, okay. They raided my property, they wrecked my property. They then turned round and said that nobody could go to the police. They were already negotiating with the police. In a subsequent court case, as a result of what transpired, in the midst of it, I asked the barrister, asked them, did they have police sanction? The barrister said he wouldn't ask that. I said, I employ you, you don't employ me. Ask the question. The question was asked, and the answer is a matter of court record. Prior to them ever sitting on the policing board, they were talking to the police. When they were picketing Newry Town Hall and telling me I couldn't go into Cass to get the police, they were already in discussions with the police. I have heard a lot here tonight. I've watched the last meeting, which I couldn't get to. And all I can say is to the Quinn family, if I end up in the same place where your son ended up, fair play. But I want to say one thing, I'm standing here, I'm standing up, and if all the people of South Armagh haven't the guts to stand up, then you might as well go home. Stand up now and say we're here. If we have to get done, we get done. But at the end of the day, I'd rather die young and brave than old and cowardly. Stand up and be counted.
Thank you, Declan. If I look at Fred's picture, and I'm very interested now, but actually what I can see here is a young, a 19-year-old looking into the camera. And maybe there's more I don't know, but that's what I can see from them pictures. But have we any more? We're coming very close to our deadline. We have a few minutes yet, time for a couple more, if we have them.
Mr. and Mrs. Quinn, my name's Sinead Larkin Steele. I'm from Drummondhee, but I live in Belfast, and I travelled from Belfast this evening to be here to express my sympathy to your family and the abhorrence of not alone the people from Collyhanna and Crossmidlen and Collaville and those areas, but Drummondhee and Jonesborough. And I see some of my fellow parishioners here, and I'm sure they're here to express their sympathy to you as well. What I wanted to say is Conor Murphy, and I see Mr. O'Keelan is a consummate politician when he stands up and he speaks out of both sides of his mouth. I have no political agenda whatsoever. Even with people sitting here tonight, and he didn't actually say anything like a lot of the other politicians who did express their sympathy and who did express their support for you. Mr. O'Keelan's ministerial, Stormont ministerial colleague, Conor Murphy, called your son a criminal, and Mr. O'Keelan could not stand here tonight and say, he said that he spoke to Conor Murphy, but he couldn't say that Conor Murphy retracted what he had said about your son. What I would say to the Quinn family and to the people of South Armagh, not just the people that are here, but the people from Killian to Cady, is that we have all the power within our hands to deal with Sinn Féin and these monsters that perpetrated this act, and it is one vote, and we all go into the ballot box whenever the next election is, be it council election or be it a Stormont election or a Westminster election, and we must remember that I have a 10-week-old son who is at the moment living in Belfast, but I sincerely hope he lives in Drummondhee and he plays for Drummondhee and he goes on to do great things for South Armagh. Why I'm here is because I have a fear that the monsters that did this and their subsequent generations will continue to do it to our community. When you go in, remember, when you go in to vote, remember Paul Quinn, and remember that you have brothers and fathers and uncles and nephews that this could have happened to. It happened to a fellow student that I went to school with in St Paul's several years ago, who played for Drummondhee Club, one of their best players, who could have went on to play for Armagh, who ended up in the Royal Victoria Hospital with practically every bone in his body broken, and who was never really able to play again. And that happened repeatedly within our own parish, and we should be apologising to the Quinn family. And I'm sure there's people here who know of other people, like for example John Fee, who's now dead, that maybe would be alive had he not received such a severe beating 10 years ago. But that this could happen to any one of our brothers or sisters. It's unfortunate that the people of South Armagh did not stand up when there was, certainly in our parish, we should be ashamed of ourselves, because at least 6 or 7 men were beaten to a pulp and nobody said anything. Letters didn't go into the newspapers, and of course the media should be ashamed of themselves as well, because when letters did go in, they weren't printed or they were heavily censored so as to protect Sinn Féin and the movement, of the fascist movement that they are. Remember when you go into the ballot box to remember Paul Quinn, and treat Conor Murphy with the contempt that he deserves, and vote for anybody except Conor Murphy in the next year.
Thank you, Sinead. I think we have 2 people lined up. One thing, we have 2 speakers lined up, and I think with these 2 people speak, we wind it up because there's no past time. But I just want to make a brief point about our past history, because most of us have lived through which are called tumultuous times, and times have changed in South Armagh. The people here in this room will have different perspectives on the past, but I was one man who was proud of the Irish Republican Army when they were fighting the British Empire, when they were fighting SAS and Marines and paratroopers and all of them, and RUC and all. I was proud of them then. And I'm sad that the day has come when people that they have recruited are bringing them down. That's what I want to say on that issue.
My name is Liam Kennedy. I came down from Belfast to attend the meeting. It's a great privilege to hear what the people are saying here. I've spent a number of years, maybe misspent years, helping some victims of loyalist and Provo paramilitary organisations in Belfast. And one of the things I find, in a sense, appalling about, and there are many, many appalling things about the Quinn murder, but if you place it in a kind of historical context, I mean, if you think of Robert McCartney, who was savagely beaten and stabbed to death at the Short Strand in Belfast a few years ago, and there are many, many others like that. I mean, what happened immediately was slander in relation to the victim, slander in relation to his family, and then kind of half-hearted support, and this applies on the loyalist side as well as the Provo side. Promises of support. The problem is, I mean, the whole, unfortunately, I mean, there are good people in Sinn Féin. I've spoken to many individuals. But the machine, as it is primarily concerned with looking after its own, just like the UDA and UVF and different factions therein are primarily concerned about looking after their own. So when a Sinn Féin representative says to me, as they have in the past, we want justice for this particular victim, and by the way, they don't say that very often, but when they say that, I think the real test is what they're going to do about it. We have a tradition both on the loyalist side and on the ultranationalist side of speaking with forked tongue, and frankly, the rhetoric is usually not worth the paper it's written on. Go and ask the McCartney family in Belfast and many other families, or indeed ask victims of loyalist paramilitary terror on the Shankill. We need much more than sweet words. And can I say that I suppose I've dealt with a fair number of victims on both sides over the last 15 years or so, including, incidentally, it may even have been the previous speaker who talked about the young man, I don't know if it's the same young man I visited in hospital in Belfast a number of years ago, almost every bone in his body broken. He was a student at Jordanstown, our sister university, the University of Ulster. And His father spoke out once against what happened to his son. Very unusual. But what was entirely predictable was that he shut up immediately. And both on the Loyalist and Republican side, the victims and the families' victims, in 95% plus of cases, have never spoken out. And I get the impression here that that is also, alas, the history in South Armagh, in the border region. So it's, you know, it's wonderful. It's great to see the risen people, as it were, tonight, because what the Quinn family are doing, what the McCartney family did in Belfast, and what victim of the Loyalist paramilitary organisations, McCourt, did. I mean, that is so unusual and so brave. It's wonderful to see it happening. And my final point is, there are so many other families who presumably have been enduring trauma, suffering in silence down the years, perhaps the decades, and perhaps we might also think of them tonight as well as the Quinn family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liam. And I'd like to word before you go away, Liam, please. Then Franny will be the last speaker. Sorry. Well, we'll add one more in. Go on, that's it, after Raymond.
Good evening. My name is Francis McNamee. I would like to start by first offering sincere sympathy to Stephen and Breach and James and Kathy on their loss. A number of years ago, I took part, along with Jim there, in a campaign for justice for Frederick Carr, in which we managed to unite the entire community and indeed the whole country. That was also the case at the start of the Justice for Paul Quinn campaign. Every house in the country was united in their support for the Quinn family due to the brutality of the act which robbed the family of their son and brother. However, I came here tonight because I'm concerned and worried about recent events which have occurred in South Armagh in connection with this campaign. Lately, support for your campaign is fast disappearing as people become disillusioned by the beatings that have taken place on young people whose names have been smeared on the walls of Cullyhanna, Crossmaglen and Silverbridge in the name of the Quinn Justice Campaign. These photographs I have here would prove what I'm saying. And the committee's welcome to see them. It's only a matter of time until these attacks leave another mother without a son or a daughter. And then Paul Quinn will become just another statistic because it's the last event which will be remembered. Your campaign at the moment is driving a wedge through the heart of your own community because of these actions. You, as a committee, have a responsibility towards the general public. And if by your words or actions you cause harm to anyone, then you need to step back and look at where this campaign is going. If you divide the people, your campaign for justice will fail. I have spent a long time around Cullyhanna in the years gone by, and I've met some of the best people one could ever expect to meet. It's heartbreaking now to see neighbours who are once great friends not speaking to each other, brothers falling out with brothers, and families at war with each other. I feel as if someone has pushed a self-destruct button. Surely we have seen enough conflict these past 30 years without turning on each other. We all have sons and daughters who are precious to us. Let us not poison them. Let them go out and enjoy themselves without having to look over their shoulders. Lastly, there are a few people here tonight whom I've known all my life and who may feel that they've been aggrieved by their public movement. But I would say to them, don't use Paul Quinn to air your grievances. The Paul Quinn Justice Group should be about Paul Quinn and nothing else. There are other platforms to sort your issues out. Once again, I offer sympathy to Stephen and Breach and hope that justice prevails. Thank you.
Thank you, Franny. And we have a look at those pictures. Franny, you are one of those men that I was proud of down the years. But I can guarantee you that nobody belonging to this group or connected to this group has anything to do with putting pictures on walls or putting people's names on walls. We have systematically called for none of this to be done. So if somebody goes out and writes something on a wall, it can't be their fault just because they perhaps are maybe in favour of getting justice for Paul Quinn. If some young lads get into a fight, we can't be blamed. We are not attempting to be a police force as some other people are attempting to be. We are attempting to walk through the legal system and get real justice for this brother man and for his family. And I do find it sad. I do find it sad that I say someone that I was proud of down the years can get up and start off with sympathy as a normal thing and then get into a diatribe attacking the very group that's working for the people and trying to achieve justice. The very last speaker is another old friend of mine and another scion of the Republican movement, Eamon Larkin.
Chairman, Stephen and Breach, I just want to appeal to the young people or to anybody that is asked to participate in an action such as led to the death of Paul Quinn, or the beatings. The beatings within one kick of death. I have witnessed them. I've seen the first of them in Drummondhee, and I've seen the last of them. And I would appeal to the young people, if you are asked to partake in them by a mob, or by a political party, or a military organisation, think twice. And think the third time. Because I can tell you, I was reared up in a household that took part not alone in this campaign, but in the Tan War. And I can tell you one thing, when politicians, let them be from Sinn Féin or whoever they like, when they bed themselves into any of these institutions, they'll soon forget this. Let us get into it. You may think you're powerful now, but down I have lived a lot of my life. And I've seen a lot happening over the last 40 years. And as I say, I know them that partook in the military campaign during the 20s. I was reared with them. And I can tell you, and I'm going to tell you now, I've seen some of them and they ended up in the workhouse in Dundalk and in the workhouse in Uri. And them that went to Dublin, them great men, turned their back on them. I know one case where one of the leading men in South Armagh was in trouble and he went to petition a leading politician from South Armagh and he was turned away from the door. That's facts. And the same will happen yourselves, so think twice. The Free State government in 1922 sent Paddy O'Kelly, the commander of the Dublin Guard, to Tralee for to wreak mayhem and destruction, which he did do. He was one of Collins's leading men. He broke the IRA in Kerry. We all know the tragedies of Kerry. He come back home when it was all over. The Free State government told him in 1824, go home, we don't need you anymore. To the young people of South Armagh, whatever part of Monaghan this is, and North Louth, think twice, because you're only being used. For me and Margaret.
Thank you very much. We normally end up by giving you some indications of where the campaign is going from now, but as we have went well over our time, we won't do that. You know as we go along what we intend to do, where we intend to go, and who are meeting, etc., etc. So I want to once again thank each and every one of you for coming here, and particularly thank everybody who has spoken, including those who disagree with my analysis of the way the group is run, like Fred or Brandon or Franny. People spoke here tonight courteously and fairly. And whether we agree or disagree with each other, that's a different point. But we can stand up and speak our mind to each other and not fall out over it. That's a step forward. So thank you all very, very much for coming and supporting the Quinn Support Group. Thank you very much.